Merhaba Disket Kutusu takipçileri. Bugün çok sevdiğim ve yakından takip ettiğim bir bağımsız oyun geliştiriciyle beraberiz. Sayın Rami İsmail. Welcome, Rami. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. Rami, I know you very well. I have been following you for 4 to 5 years right now. And I'm also, I love your games.
Thank you.
Your William Beer games. But I would like you to introduce yourself a little bit to our viewers.
Right. So my name is Rami Ismail. I was formerly one half of Dutch independent game studio Vlambeer. People might know me from my work on games such as Super Crate Box, Luftrausers, Ridiculous Fishing, and Nuclear Throne. Beyond that, I'm the creator of PressKit, which is a free online tool used by a lot of people in the games industry to create press kits for their work. I'm an industry ambassador, and I've traveled the past 10 years around the world, including to Turkey.
You have come to Turkey?
Yeah, absolutely. To talk to the local game development community or in
Bahçeşehir University, I think.
By the university, yeah. Traveled the world to meet with developers, to see what issues they have, what opportunities they have, and try and make the games industry a fairer place. In 2008, I won the Games Developer Choice Ambassador Award, and I've won some other awards. That's not really that important, but that's what I've been up to. And then recently, we wound it down Vlambeer in September of 2020, and since then, I've been focusing on taking some rest and doing consultancy. So I've been doing phone calls. Now with the Corona crisis, obviously I can't travel the world as much. So I'm just doing phone calls with developers that have issues, problems, questions. That's been really fun.
The disbanding of Vlambeer was a sad point for me. It was disbanded at the 10th anniversary of the company. So why did you come to that conclusion?
Right. That's a good question. So Vlambeer started in 2010. Me and my co-founder at the time, Jan Willem Nijman, who we refer to as JW. Me and JW both dropped out of our university because they were having some issues with the curriculum, and both of us felt like we could learn more outside of school than inside of school. Both of us had been making games for over a decade at that point. So we kind of knew what we were doing, right? I got into a fight with the school over the rights over a video game that I was working on, so I left, and Jan Willem also left. And over my career, prior to my career, from the age of 6 to the age of 19, I'd been making games, modding, and even selling some games, right? But most of the games I worked on took a year and a half to finish, and it made me really good at finishing games. It made me good at thinking about how to sell games. It made me capable of thinking about the commercial reality of games. JW, on the other hand, he'd been a game jammer. So since he was 13, every week he would release a different game, or every few days he would release a different game. And they were all very small. Many of them weren't very good, but every now and then there would be something really wonderful. So when we both quit school, we realized that I'm really bad at starting games, and he's really bad at finishing games, because I had only started a few games and I'd finished them over a year and a half, and he had started hundreds of games but never finished one.
A perfect match.
A perfect match. Now, the big problem is that we hate each other. So I really didn't like Willem's attitude towards the world. He thought he was such an artist, and games should be made for the art, not for the money, and I don't know what. And he thought I was a business guy. I was just a suit, right? I only cared about the money. I didn't care about the art. So we really didn't like each other, but we needed each other to get started. So we agreed on a project, and we said, we'll do this 1 or 2 games, and then hopefully we'll have enough money to continue with our life and have a little bit of a runway. And instead of doing that, over 10 years, I wouldn't say we became friends, but we got to respect each other, and we made almost 20 games as Vlambeer, some of them commercial, some of them freeware, and I had a blast. It was great. Working with Willem, it taught me a lot. I think he would say the same the other way around about how to think about things. I became a much better designer through working with him and having him validate my thoughts, having him argue with me over things. And I think he became a much better business person and maybe even a better programmer through talking to me. After Nuclear Throne, we were very exhausted. Nuclear Throne was an early access game. It took 3 years to make, and we live streamed every week, twice every week for those 3 years. We did an update every week for those 3 years. And after that, we decided to take a break. It was the first time that we could take a break since we started Vlambeer. And it was a lovely year. Both of us focused on things that were important to us. Jan Willem worked on Minute. And I worked on Game Dev World, which was a free online conference in 8 different languages to share knowledge, right? So we came back and we said, okay, we'll take another year off. And then after that, we said, okay, let's make some small games again. And we started on a game called Ultra Bugs. And that was supposed to be a really short game, like really quick. But instead of being really quick, it took us so long because both of us had found different things that we cared about. I cared about Game Dev World, I cared about this consultancy, I cared about making sure people around the world had opportunities, and sure, I want to make video games. But that had become somewhat of a lower priority for me at that point. I really wanted to see if I could fix part of the language barrier, right? And for Jan Willem, he wanted to make smaller games. He didn't want the commercial pressure of things. He just wanted to take the stability that Vlambeer had given us and make small games with small teams on no deadline, which is not what I want to do, right? So as 10 years came up, we realized that Vlambeer has always been a statement studio. Everything we did was a statement, right? Radical Fishing, we tried to make the best Flash game ever. Super Crate Box, small business card game, IGF nominated. The Serious Sam the Random Encounter was one of the first games that Devolver Digital published. So an indie working with a publisher was a big deal. Ridiculous Fishing, best iOS game ever in a time where iOS games weren't being made or weren't that common. Like most iOS games were small, very repeatable things. With Ridiculous Fishing, we tried to bring some of the, like, we called it grandness back in the day to iOS. A prestige game for iOS. With Luftrausers, we were one of the first indies of that generation to jump to console, and we helped define what indie on console looked like. Nuclear Throne was an early access game that was sold on Twitch. We were the first game to ever be sold on Twitch. Whenever we did something, we tried to say something with it, right? It was a direction that we believed indie should go in, an attitude that we believed that was good, or an opportunity that we think was worth exploring. And then when we realized that we weren't working as well together anymore, right, that we both had found our different interests, we realized that there was one more statement that Vlambeer could make, which is, it's okay to quit.
In your own terms.
On your own terms, not because the company is bankrupt, not because there's a scandal, not because there was a fight, just because sometimes it's okay to look at the things you've achieved and go, you know, that was awesome. I had a great time. This was lovely. We've built something really, really wonderful. We've said everything we wanted to say. We've made the games we could make. And we've proven that we're really good at that. And now it's time for something else. It's time for a reinvention. It's time for new directions. Like, what's the point of building something like that if all you're going to do is keep doing it until it doesn't work anymore, right?
Yeah.
Why not just quit? Why not just move on to something that is more interesting to you? So we made one last statement with Vlambeer, and I'm so extraordinarily proud of what we've done with that studio across 10 years of time. We've released 20 games. We've helped define contracts between indies and major platforms. We've been trailblazers. We've created opportunity. We've helped people figure things out. We were there when Devolver Digital started. We were there when PlayStation started its indie thing. We were there when ID at Xbox started. Like, so much of what is there now, we had the privilege of being early with. Like, what an incredible story for two kids from like the Netherlands, from tiny towns in the Netherlands, like Gouda and Alphen aan den Rijn, like not the biggest places. How wonderful that could be our story, right?
Right.
And now it's time for new stories.
There is a very deep and precious lesson from what you told us right now, that two people that's not necessarily friends can become successful partners, release successful games, make a successful business, and end that business in their own terms, not be friends, but be ex-colleagues and continue their way.
Yeah, I think at the heart of everything, the thing that I've learned that made Vlambeer work is that we didn't like each other, but we respected each other, right? I respect Jan Willem's design decisions more than any designer I've ever met, and I've met legendary designers, right? I've met the best designers in the industry, the people that get the design awards, and if I could choose between what they tell me and what Jan Willem tells me, I will trust Jan Willem every time, because I know that he will never tell me that my ideas are better than they are, because he doesn't like me. There's no reason for him to do that. There's no reason to be nice to me. He can just go like, no, this is bad. And I trust his vision on that, right? And I think the other way around, Jan Willem very much respected what I brought to Vlambeer, with sort of like the business and the programming and like creating opportunity for the studio and navigating it into places where not only would we create opportunity for ourselves, but also create opportunity for people that came after us. And I think that mutual respect was very important. The lesson we learned is about communication. It's about how do you structure communication in a team. And more than anything, if you want to make games, if you want to ship a video game, right? If you want to be successful as a game developer, at the heart of it is communication. Everything is communication. The game itself is communication. You're communicating feelings, challenges, opportunities, affordances. You're communicating them to players, and you want to make sure that communication is clear, that it's not ambiguous, that it's obvious that, okay, this is supposed to feel good, this is supposed to feel bad, this is a warning, this is a reward, this is your goal, this is your objective, these are the obstacles, this is the feeling that it generates. That's communication, right? And marketing is communication. It's saying like, hey, if you pay us this amount of money, we think this game will be worth more than the amount of money you give us, right? That this game will be worth your time. This game will be interesting to you. But most importantly, in your team. When you are working in your team, getting things aligned, making sure people agree with each other, making sure people feel safe to talk about their worries, the things they see as dangers to the project, the things they see as opportunities for the project, that they can communicate bad ideas, right? They may sit there and be like, okay, listen, I have an idea. It's not great, but like, I just want to talk about it real quick, right? That environment exists where people can complain about things, where there's respect for each other, where there's time to listen to each other. That's the most important thing in making games. People always talk about like, does my programming need to be good, or does my design need to be good, or like,
no, communication.
All of those matter less than communication, right? I would much rather have a team of mediocre, like new designers, programmers, artists that communicate well, than a team of experts that don't know how to talk to each other. Because I'm sure I will make a better team with the new developers.
You tell me that your partners saw you as a suite, as a person that's in the business for the money. But what I see in Turkey, in most of the indie developers, they miss that point altogether. Most of the time, they think that development and artistic design should take 100 of the time,
right?
But they totally miss the marketing and admin side of the things.
Right.
How can they overcome this?
Well, when we started in 2010, actually, most indies were very similar to that, right? Most indies that were around in 2010 didn't care about marketing, they didn't care about business, they didn't care about administration, management, things like that. People remember Vlambeer. They don't remember all the other ones, right? Because the other ones didn't survive. Very few of the indies that were around back then are still making games. And the ones that are still making games, a lot of them realized at some point that they needed to do the business and the marketing and get things right, or work with somebody who could, right? I think a mistake a lot of people make is thinking that these are separate things, right? That game development, marketing, business, that they are separate things. But the reality is that game development is a process. It's a team process. And to have a team process go right, you need to manage the process. You can't just have everybody yelling at each other and then hope a video game comes out. No, you need a hierarchy. You need to think about who's responsible for what, who's accountable for what, who works on what, right? Like who's in charge of developing a certain feature, and when is it supposed to be done? What is the timeline for the project? And what are the deadlines for specific things? Which people need to sit in a room together to figure out a problem, and which people are responsible if they don't figure that out, right? Who's in charge of making sure that there's funding and resources to continue developing the game in such a way that it doesn't have to be rushed, that people don't have to overwork, that people don't burn out. That's all part of game development. The other part that is also game development is thinking about, how does the player play this game? How does the player feel about this game? How do we communicate this game to potential players, right? Because those are not separate questions. Your design, your ability to communicate, your ability to pitch, your ability to market your game, all stem from thinking about how to communicate what the beauty is of your work, what the art is of your work, what the values of your work. That's not contradictory to art. Of course, that's not contradictory to art. Games always exist at this intersection between art and technology and commerce. We're always at that intersection. But art has always been that way. It's not like the artists of old that made the big paintings of our time and that weren't thinking about money. Of course they were thinking about money. They were just frequently poor, but they were thinking about money because you kind of need it to survive. And that was when an individual was painting, right? All they needed to do is pay for paint, pay for brushes, and pay for a surface to paint on. When we're working on a game, we need several people. We need an artist, we need a designer, we need a programmer, we need a musician, sound designer. We might need QA, localization. We need all of these things. Of course, money becomes a question. Of course, commerce becomes a question. And with that, marketing becomes a question because you want to earn back that revenue. But I find that for a lot of Lambert's game, the marketing was immediately obvious. And that's how I knew it was a good game, because it was immediately clear how we could sell it. It was immediately clear why people would care about this game. Oh, that airplane going right over the water and the splashes behind it. Like the first time we saw Luftrausers and we had those systems there, it was so clear what we were making. We were making a game about being the coolest fighter pilot in the world, right? And our entire marketing was based on that feeling. Big explosions, reflections, bullets everywhere, big like zeppelins and airplanes that shoot lasers. Like it was so clear, but that developed at the same time, not separate. I think a lot of people, when they're young designers or when they're not designers, they come at games from a technical point of view, right? They approach it as a code puzzle. How do we program these pieces to interact with each other? And design isn't that. Design is problem solving. It's taking a step back from, okay, I have a player and I have an enemy. How do I make the player hit the enemy on the top and then the enemy squishes and you beat it? It's about thinking, why would the player want to do that? And how do these two interact? Should they interact? Is the enemy needed? Is the player, I guess the player is needed. How do you defeat the enemy? How do you interact with the enemy? What feeling does that create? What essence does that create? What value does that create, right? Can I use this in a way to communicate more than the game itself, a sense of excitement or challenge or tension? That's where design is. It's a lot about what happens in the player's head. And I think for a lot of people, it's really hard. A lot of young developers, it's really hard to detach themselves from looking at a game as a developer, right? As somebody who's making the game. And I think when you take a step back and you start thinking about marketing, you start thinking about, can I use this moment in a trailer? Now you're asking way more interesting questions, because now you're thinking about, okay, how does that communicate to the player, right? What does this say to the player? So I think if you see them as separate, you're partially already failing. at being a good game developer, because you're not taking into account the context of how the game is going to be played, and that it's a hard lesson to learn. There's a really good blog post that I actually recommend to everybody. It's called "Designing for Subway Legibility." It's written by Zach Gage, who worked with me on Ridiculous Fishing, and it's about how if you're designing a game and somebody's playing it, and they're playing it on the tram or in the subway, that if somebody is sitting next to them and they're just watching your screen, that they should be able to figure out what is happening and why it's happening.
That's good game design, right?
That's good game design. That's good communication, right? Game design is communication. Everything goes back to communication. So, but it's also good marketing, because if the person next to the person playing it is looking at the game, they're like, "Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's good marketing." And you see how these are intertwined, how they're not separate. They're the same thing. That's what's critical. That's what's important to get right.
Yeah. That's a lesson that has to be learned by indie developers, because, as you said, most of them see their game as a precious artistic entity, apart and above all monetary things.
Right. I mean, and you can do that, and you'll make different games. That's true, but you won't make games that help you make more games. You'll make one game, right? For me, as a game developer, my goal is always to make games in plural, to not just be able to make this one, but to also have enough money to make the next one, to have enough opportunity to make the next one, to have a better position that I'm in for the next one, a bigger community, more fans, more reach, more money, more team. I think it's the other thing to keep in mind is that I think a lot of developers, especially in the situation that you're describing, aren't necessarily even thinking of their games as art, but they're just looking at it as a technical product, right? They haven't made that step to design, and with design sort of automatically comes a step to marketing. Because I honestly don't know many game designers that when they are designing the game are not thinking about, okay, is this interesting? Is this special? Does this stand out? What is unique about it, right? And that's marketing. In a way, all of that is just marketing. So whether you're looking at it as art or as technological product or whatever, if at no point your consideration is what is the player context? What is the player journey? How do we make sure that people play it? Then you're just making a bunch of code, like compiled code. If nobody plays your game, is it a game? Or is it just code, right? So for me, saying, well, we're not going to do marketing because we're making art. If nobody plays your art, is it art? Or is it just lines of code on a computer?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
A game's value, a game's ability to touch people, to move people, to engage with people comes from when they play the game. So that has to be part of your art. It has to be part of your marketing. It has to be part of your design. It has to be part of your business.
It has to be in their minds right from the beginning. Yeah.
I agree. I think obviously there's the ideation phase where you're just coming up with ideas, and I wouldn't worry too much about business. But when you start picking ideas from that ideation, when you start locking things down, that's when you should be thinking about those things. It's like, will people be interested in this? Will people like this? And I think very often the approach people take is like, does this work? Which is not an interesting. That's not an interesting question, because work, everything can work. You can make the worst game in history and it will be functional. It'll work. It won't be fun. It won't be interesting. It won't do anything for people. It'll just work. That's a shame.
Yeah. Rami, we know that you are giving mentorship to gaming startups in the studios and also game companies from Middle East and more disadvantaged backgrounds. Right. How is that going? How can people reach you? Because we have a very, very big indie developer viewers in our channel, and they will be interested to talk to you.
Right. So, the mentorship I've been doing. So before COVID, before the Corona crisis, I traveled the world and I went to all these places and I would meet all these developers and I'd learn from them. Like they would learn from me, absolutely, but I would also learn from them. I would see what issues people had, what games they were making, what challenges they were facing, what opportunities they had, right? What history they could mine from, and what culture they had access to. And it was wonderful. It was so precious to me to meet all these people and to have this contrast and to learn from people in, you know, Turkey, and then talk about the things I'd learned and help people with that knowledge in Argentina, right? And with COVID, that all came to a halt. Like, obviously I can't travel as much right now, so I'm mostly sitting at home. And I realized, like, after a few months, I realized that I felt like a tree without water, right? I felt I needed that contact with these developers and this feeling of where the industry is and what its problems are. So I said, okay, what if everything is digital now? What if we change it to digital? So on my Twitter, I made a tweet that linked to a page where people can schedule a phone call with me. There are 3 paid phone calls and then a corporate rate, which I let rich companies pay for most of this. But then most importantly, there is a free call. It's a 20-minute call. And to anybody who's listening to this, if you are a Turkish developer, if you are in Turkey, you're free, you're welcomed to use that 20-minute call to talk about the issues you might be facing, challenges you might be having, things you can't figure out, or just to spar about your game design or maybe a pitch that you're doing to a publisher. You can find that schedule at Calendly. That's Calend and then LY, calendly.com/THA_Rami.
I will also include the link below. So
that will be awesome.
Right.
But yeah, if you have any questions, just go there, answer the questionnaire, and then pick a time and a date, and I'll be there, and we can chat about your game. Yeah. And hopefully I'll be able to help you, and hopefully you will help me understand better what problems, what questions, what the state of game development is in your communities, and that helps me as well. So
yeah, thank you so much. And I would like to talk about another aspect of your professional game development life. You are the only prolific developer that raises his voice against Muslim discrimination and stereotyping in games. Because you are of Arabic origin and a Muslim, yes. I value this immensely. So would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us, a lot of people from the Middle East, a lot of Muslims know that speaking up is risky, right? That it is something that can affect their opportunities, it can affect their visa, it can affect their opportunity to work. And for a lot of Muslims, Middle Eastern people that work in larger studios, losing access to the US potentially is a career ender, right?
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate in that I was an independent developer. I was an independent developer in 2010 when the industry didn't have much of a structure yet, and indie didn't really have a shape yet. So I was lucky in that I managed to grow and to reach more people. Back when there wasn't enough structure to really be racist or discriminatory against Middle Eastern people or Muslims. And it didn't mean I didn't come across things that were really uncomfortable or really strange, that the industry doesn't build itself around things that are contradictory to my faith or my background. But the reality is that I'm not necessarily the only prolific developer that's speaking out. I'm probably the only one that can do it in public with the reach I have, because if the US tells me I can't go to the US anymore, I just go, okay, people will come to me, right? I'll go to Canada. And then I'll just get people to visit me there.
Did the US?
No, so mostly the US always pulls me apart to question me, and sometimes they bring up tweets. Sometimes they ask about a tweet, and I'm obviously very lucky in that I'm half Dutch, half Egyptian. So I have a European passport that I can travel with, which is an incredible privilege, an incredible power to have on Earth, is to have a passport that is trusted everywhere. And that has given me a lot of opportunity. But I can imagine that if you don't have something like that, if you don't have access to a passport that gives you access to countries like the US without questions, without problems, that please don't speak up. Please be quiet. Please, unless you really want to, let me fight that fight. Let the people that can fight that fight. Because I would hate to lose opportunity for people. And it's not an easy fight. It's not a fun fight, but given
it's a fight, you take a stance about.
Right. It's an important fight. And even though, we haven't fixed everything by a long shot, I think we've made progress, right? Like now when developers include Arabic, they message me because they know if they get it wrong, it ends up on notarabic.com. When people represent Muslims, they know to hire Muslims to talk about like how to portray them, how to discuss them, how to represent them. When people represent the Middle East, they've stepped away a little bit from like sandy villages, right? The same sandy villages we see everywhere, or like this mysticism, this Aladdin version of our lands.
Yeah, we are fed up with Turkey represented in games with camel riding, fez wearing people.
Right. It's like you could do 12 seconds of research and like realize that Turkey, like many places in the Middle East, is a vibrant community of lots of different influences, lots of different culture. Our lands have been through so much and have seen so much global trade, global influence. We've seen old wars. We've fought in old wars. We have history of many cultures embedded in our lands, in our architecture, in our cityscapes, in the way our lands are built. Like, how do we always end up with a sandy street with a Jeep with a machine gun? Like, what happened? Like, that's not what our countries look like, but they've always gotten away with doing that, right? You just kind of go like, oh, it's Arabistan, I guess, sort of Arabic place.
It doesn't make it right when you make up the name.
Exactly.
Kabilistanism.
Right.
It's not Arabic, but what is it then?
Yeah. No, and that's kind of it. I think as an industry, we're slowly getting better at that. And honestly, the biggest evidence, the last Call of Duty, like it did Modern Warfare, the recent remake. There's a lot of things I'm still annoyed about, but you did play your main protagonist was actually a Middle Eastern woman, right?
I didn't play it. I have veered away from Call of Duties a little years back,
right?
But I would be interested if you say, because I remember that we rejected to review the latest Medal of Honor because it came to our attention that they are selling an in-game item that will be going to the veterans of Iraqi war in US veterans, but that didn't click with us, and we refused plainly to review it, but we didn't talk it allowed, like you said.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's the safer bet, is to be careful, because opportunity is really valuable, and even though whether we like it or not, right? The reality is that in our world, access to the West, or to China or to Japan is important. Like, you need access to those markets to be successful. And I think most developers are looking at the West. Most developers imagine their game on the Steam front page, right? On iOS, on Android, on PlayStation, on Xbox. And even though Nintendo and Sony are both Japanese companies, they're mostly run from the US. So, well, maybe not Nintendo, but having access to those, having access to GDC, to PAX is important. So I always recommend people to just be a little careful with what they're critical of, not to tell them that they have to be quiet. If people want to speak up, please do, but be aware of the opportunities and risks that it can create.
Yeah.
And then if there's something you see that you hate or are angry about, feel free to DM me or anybody else, and we will happily yell on your behalf. Like, that's we're happy to. There's a bunch of us. There's more and more of us in the industry, and I think that has been really fun. We started me and Osama Dorias at Warner Bros. And Fawzi Mesmar.
The Habibis, right?
We started a podcast called The Habibis, and even though it's technically a podcast for Arabs by Arabs. We've realized that really we're not just capturing the Arab experience, because throughout the Middle East, we're very similar people in many ways, right?
Yeah.
We have the same feeling of warmth towards guests. We have the same feeling of honor and pride and thankfulness towards family and like achievements. And children have to like convince their parents that they want to be not a doctor, not a lawyer, not an engineer, but you know, a game developer. We can argue about foods all day, right?
Yeah.
Who makes the better sweets? Who makes the better foods?
Our mothers still use their slippers as a epic weapon,
right? And that's it. Like in the cultures that we there's much that we share, and we've realized over the what months that we've doing the Habibis now, that the fact to see, we hear from a lot of people that seeing those parts of their culture, even though it's not fully the same culture. Jordan is different from Iraq, is different from Egypt, is different from all the other countries in the Middle East. That it's really special to have visible game developers talking from our cultures, right? Not about shooting us or fighting us or going to war with us, but about, you know, parking our car, or about our mother making a dish, and how we are not really allowed to help in preparing the dish because we will mess it up, right? About the cabinet with the fancy plates, like stuff like that, where it's like, right, this is us, and we haven't had a place to talk, and the Habibis for us, I hope it can be that place for everybody in the Middle East, for everybody who recognizes their culture in that, because we haven't had a place. And,
you didn't, yeah.
It's about time. It's also a wonderful way for us to work together, right? To support each other. We have a number of like visible people in the industry in there, from all across the Middle East, right? From all the way from Morocco, North Africa, all the way to Iran, like the entire region, with political differences, with discussions with each other, countries that don't even like each other, but the people in the countries, they're very similar, right? We're all having our own problems. We're all dealing with our own situations. We don't necessarily agree with each other fully, but I think there is so much that we share. Being able to help each other that way, and to talk to each other, and to give feedback on each other's games, to help market things, to signal boost each other's work. It's about time.
Yeah, I always dreamed of games as a medium to be the common denominator that brings people together. But in the past 10 years, they have become, I don't know how, toxic place that people yell at each other. They push each other, and
it's a genuine shame. It's a genuine shame, because when you look at games, you know, like when you take a step back, what are games, right? Games are play. It's playfulness. And if there's one thing that connects all humans, no matter what, it's play. Because no matter where I go, right, if I put a soccer ball on the ground and I kick it at you,
I kick back.
You kick it back. We don't even have to be able to talk to each other. We don't have to be able to communicate. If I have a ball in my hand and I throw it at you, you catch it, you throw it back, right? That's playfulness. We don't have to agree to each other. And we might even play a little game where we try to kick the ball past each other, or we might attempt to like do really hard throws to catch, but we don't have to be able to talk. We can just kind of like go like, right? And then it works. Play as a language is the oldest language we speak, because the only reason we were able to develop language is by making sounds at each other, and then at some point agreeing that this sound meant that, right? That's play.
Yeah.
We didn't have rules. We just played with that. If you were in the early days of humanity, if you were somebody who only threw rocks at something when you were trying to kill something, right? An animal for food, you would be worse at it than somebody who, for fun, would also throw the rock at trees and just be like, "Hey, can I hit that tiny thing?" Right? If you were climbing trees for fun, you had a better chance of escaping animals that would chase you. So playfulness evolved into our species. We want to be playful. The humanity, there's a book about this by Johan Huizinga called The Homo Ludens, the playing man. And I think it's even though it's a pretty heavy philosophical book, I think there's a lot of truth in it, in that at our core, we want to be playful, right? Yeah. We want this space to explore our relationship with other people, our relationship with the world, our ability to do things, our ability to complete things, our ability to rise to a challenge or to improve at something. We want that in our lives. And even though life kind of like punches it out of us with like responsibilities and education and job and having to make money and mortgages and debt and I don't know what, like the world wants to put us on a course that is more controllable, right? More rigid. I think at heart, people always want to play. And that's why we like watching football. It's why we like playing board games. It's why when we want to relax, we grab a chessboard or a backgammon or whatever, and we play. We sit, we talk, we play. We create these contexts in which we can do fun things. And the only thing that's changed is that now it's digital. That's our job. Our job is the oldest torch in history, the torch of play, the torch that brought us language and music and survival, that brought us food and the ability to do research. It's all play. It all started from play. And our responsibility is to help carry that torch into the future, right? To make sure that in the future that, I wouldn't call it sacred, but that inherent need to play is protected and preserved and given shape in new and interesting ways, that our future generations will think of play as a wonderful thing instead of a scary thing or a toxic thing, or that we love playing, because ultimately that's what we're here to do, is to let people play.
Marvelous words from you. I would like to ask you one more question. As we are in Ramadan, you make interesting events around Muslim and Islamic culture and gaming. I especially liked your invitations of random people to iftar and sahur in your Animal Crossing village. Right. How was the reactions to that?
It was really fun. I think last year I was a little annoyed, right? I was a little annoyed because obviously COVID had happened, and normally I'm traveling for Ramadan. So even though I travel, I fast every day, and I fasted every day for as long as I can remember, because you know, there's a rule you don't have to fast when traveling, but I think they meant when you're doing like hard travel on a camel in a desert. Right. I'm sitting in an airplane with air conditioning for like 12 hours working on my laptop. Like, I don't really think that counts as travel.
Yeah.
So I've fasted every day for the past decades. But the wonderful thing was every morning, every evening, when I was in interesting places, I would be able to have suhoor and iftar with different people. I've had suhoor and iftar in Australia. I've had suhoor and iftar in all across Europe. I've had suhoor and iftar all the way north in Sweden in a tiny village with a castle. And it was always with different people. And I would always, it was such a joy to get to share that part of culture, of my faith with them. Because to me, a lot of people, a lot of Western people misunderstand that Ramadan as something really hard. Yeah. It's very difficult.
I don't know why.
Because they can't imagine fasting for 30 days. It's not a part of their culture, right? Some of them fast for Lent or for other things, but the fast, the way Muslims do it, with like this a month long, no eat, no drinking, not even water. That sounds really difficult. And you know, in many ways, I think it is not easy, but that's the point, right? Like, the point is that you challenge yourself. There's a part of discipline. There's a part of patience. There's a part of self-control. There's a part of reflection. I don't know what Ramadan is technically for, and it's not that important, but I think that to everybody, it reflects those values in some way or another. For me, Ramadan is suhoor and iftar. right? It's the community that fosters around the world, right? And it's the feeling that if I look at somebody and I go like, are you fasting? And they go, yes, that we immediately have a bond, right? I was in Sweden and I am a very long day of fast. I was all the way up north. So I think iftar was at 11 p.m. and suhoor was at 2 a.m. Right? It was ridiculous. There was only three hours of night, and the disk would just go under the horizon, and then it would be dark for like an hour and a half, and then the first light would start coming up again. And I thought, this is impossible. But I thought, I will try. I will try the first day, right? And I had arrived in the hotel, and they had no late night room service. And this was terrible because I arrived at like 10 p.m. in the evening. So I was not going to be able to eat or drink at all that night. So I decided to walk through this little village. And I walked and I looked for any open restaurants. Surely there must be a place that's open 24 hours, right? And there just was no place open until I found this pizzeria, and the lights were on, but the sign that said open was off, right? And there was a little sign that I know a little Swedish now from all my travel that said closed. I was like, you know what? I'm going to try anyway, because if this doesn't work, I'm going to go back to the hotel and I'm going to skip a day of fast for the first time in many years. And I really wouldn't want to do that. But if it's necessary, it's necessary, right? Like, we're not supposed to harm our health. So I knocked on the door, and a Swedish guy opened the door. And he said in Swedish, like, sorry, we're closed. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not from here. I don't speak Swedish. He's like, oh, and in Sweden, they speak very good English. So he just went like, I'm sorry, we're closed. And I'm like, just really quick, do you have anything at all to eat? It's I'm Muslim, it's Ramadan. He's like, you're Muslim, Ramadan, come in. And he opened the door, and there was like 20 Muslims, and they were making food, and they had the table, and this was apparently for the Muslims. This was the place where they had their communal iftar and suhoor, and they said, since we only have one meal, we just sit here for 3 hours, we talk, we play games, we hang out. And we did that for 3 hours every night. And they said, come back tomorrow and come back the day after. Every day that you're here, come here, eat with us, drink with us, laugh with us, and then go back. And every day I asked if I could pay. And every day they told me no. And I insisted, and they said, no, absolutely not. And I was their guest. And for me, that is Ramadan, right? For me, that is the wonder of it. And I realized that I was playing Animal Crossing, and I think the beauty of Animal Crossing is that it reflects our real life calendar. So when it's New Year, it's New Year, you know, and when it's Easter, it's Easter, and when it's Christmas, it's Christmas. And then I realized that Ramadan was coming up, and when it's Ramadan, it's not Ramadan in Animal Crossing, right? Ramadan does not exist in Animal Crossing. Yeah. What exists is the moon. And I thought, well, if the moon exists, and this is a game about building your own thing, and you can draw little things, why don't I create Ramadan? I'm a game developer. I'm used to, if I want to represent Muslims or Arabs or Middle Eastern people, I'll have to mod it myself, right? When I was younger, I would mod the skin tone textures to be my skin tone, because there's this sort of like Levantian Arab, North African Arab color. It doesn't exist in video games. So I modded myself into a lot of games. The shape of my beard doesn't exist in video games. Like a lot of me doesn't exist in video games. The long hair does, but that's about it. So I thought, I'll make it. So I made a little table, just like I'd seen in Egypt, where people could sit together. And I made some little drawings of a crescent moon, and I made a little square where people get together. And then I went like, I should invite some people. And then I went, I should invite any people. I should do it just like when I travel. Anybody is welcome to join. If you're a Muslim, come eat with us. If you're not Muslim, come learn with me about Islam, right? And I tweeted it, and hundreds of people said that they wanted to come. And that's actually the consultancy I do now with that Calendly that helps book my schedule. That's the tool I found to do Ramadan in Animal Crossing, because there was so many people coming in that I needed a way to select 8 people for each day.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, up to 8 people. So every day for Ramadan last year, I did Animal Crossing, and I would have people over for suhoor. I would have people over. The one day it will be suhoor, the other day it will be iftar, and people from around the world showed up. People from Malaysia where they fast, from Indonesia where they fast, people in countries that aren't Muslim but were fasting, people from the Middle East, people from Turkey, people from Egypt, people from everywhere showed up, and it was incredibly wonderful. It did make me sad that Animal Crossing doesn't put something in there, because they say they don't do religious holidays, but come on, Easter, it's kind of a religious holiday. Christmas, it kind of and they say like, well, those are not primarily religious holidays. We call them Easter Day, or
maybe 30-day events will be overwhelming, but they don't have also the Ramazan Bayram. I don't know in English.
The honest truth is, a 30-day event in Animal Crossing is not that long. Bunny Day is 14 days. That's already 2 weeks. Well, Easter itself is just days, right? If they wanted to do Ramadan, call it Crescent Month, right? It's just a little focused around the moon. There's extra food items. There's a number of decorative items like the faunis, the lanterns, right? Dates on a plate. You know, it doesn't have to be Muslim per se, because Ramadan is not just Muslim. In a lot of countries that are Muslim, Ramadan is cultural. It's the lights come out, the tempo of the day changes, the shops adjust to it, television adjusts to it, music adjusts to it, life adjusts to it. The time we wake up and go to bed adjusts to it. In Egypt, people will go on the streets early in the morning to wake people up by playing on drums. And to yell.
It's still ongoing in Turkey too.
Nice. So life adjusts to Ramadan. It's not a religious event only. It's also a cultural event. And I think Animal Crossing could do such a wonderful job of bringing people into understanding more about Muslims, to understanding more about the Middle East, about our countries, about our lands. Something positive. Something nice, not about our countries being destroyed by terrorists or by war or by poverty or whatever. No, like we have interesting lives. We have lives full of beauty and celebration and community. Animal Crossing would have such an opportunity to bring that in, but they don't. So for this year, I didn't do Animal Crossing again, even though I loved it last year. Instead, we're doing something with the Habibis, where every day we have a Habibis episode for the podcast. But I hope it gets better. I hope one year
it will be.
One year we can do Ramadan in Animal Crossing, not because I made it, but because Animal Crossing made it.
Yeah. Our beloved viewers, Rami Ismail. Very, very lovely person from our own backgrounds. Thank you so much to come visit us. I think it's the time of iftar right now, right there.
Soon.
Yeah, I will let you go, and I thank you from my heart to take this time to come talk with us.
Thank you so much, and thank you for allowing me to speak to this many developers, to people there. Again, if there are any questions people have, if people want to talk to me directly, my DMs are always open on Twitter. My email is info@ramiismail. Feel free to email something. And you can find my scheduling link at calendly.com/tha_Rami. Whatever way I can help, let me know. It will be my honor to help.
Thank you so much. And please send me all the links. Also the link to the podcast. I will include that in the description also.
Awesome. So thank you.
Have a nice Ramadan. Eid Mubarak.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much. Salam.